occupation. It's time to send in your application. Get to know your short-term friends you only talk to till summer ends. The best way to spend your day in it when you're only making $10 every 60 minutes. Let's clock out, you and me, wander around West County. Take my hand, shop and see.
Hi, my name is Emma.lou.sou. Welcome to my tutorial for the Celia Dress, my very first sewing pattern. Guys, I'm so excited for the Celia Dress and to share it with you guys. I'm literally obsessed with it. So let's just jump into some of the details about the Celia Dress. The Celia Dress has a gathered skirt, a gathered elasticated sleeves. It has 2 length options and 2 bodice options, fully lined. One thing that I'm super excited about for the Celia Dress is that it has no closure. One of my least favorite things about sewing is sewing in zippers or buttons. Sometimes it's just a hassle, and so I wanted to make a very beginner-friendly pattern for some new sewers out there. The Celia Dress comes in size 6 through 18. The Celia pattern is available online as a digital pattern on my Etsy shop, which I will have linked down below. Purchasing my pattern is a great way to support me and this YouTube channel so that I can create helpful, educational, and inspirational content for you guys. I will be sewing both versions of the Celia Dress in this tutorial, so keep watching to learn how to assemble the Celia Dress step by step. Alright, so the very first step is to print and assemble your pattern for your correct size. And then I'm just going to start cutting it out of my fabric. I chose to use a gauze material, which ended up being so beautiful, but if you're a beginner, I suggest something else like a cotton blend. Something just woven is perfect. And here are all of my pieces all cut out. Now I am just marking my darts in the bodice fronts with a water erasable pen and just pinning it together and getting it ready to sew. Now the darts are all done, and all we have to do is just press them downwards towards the waistline. The next step is to just start pinning and stitching the shoulder seams together on both the fashion fabric and the lining. And then just press those seams open. Here I have just started pinning the neckline together, getting it ready to sew. I'm now using some pinking shears to trim around the neckline. If you don't have pinking shears, you can just clip the edges as well or notch. Just be sure not to trim through the threads. Now understitch the lining so that when the garment is finished, the neckline is really nice and crisp. And
press the neckline so that it lays really flat. Now look at that beautiful neckline. It is now time to stitch the side seams together, making sure to keep the fashion fabric side seams and lining side seams separate. And now press those seams open. The bodice is now done, and it's time to add the sleeves. Now mark the gathering points and the center dot on the sleeve. Increase your length of stitch and base stitch along the top edge of the sleeve in between the two gathering dots. One line should be a 1/4 inch away from the edge and the other should be 1/2 inch. Now stitch the seam for both sleeves. Now serge to the edge. I use my serger, but you can use a zigzag stitch. And you guessed it, it's time to press. So I press the side seam to the back, and now I'm pressing the hem, which is a 1/4 inch, and then about 1 inch and 1/8 more so that we can insert some 1 inch elastic. Now stitch that into place, leaving 1 inch opening. Now cut some 1 inch elastic to your size according to the written instructions. Now I'm using this neat little tool I got at Joann's to insert the elastic into the casing we made. And then when you are done, just make sure to overlap the edges by a 1/2 inch and pin in place. Sew the edges of the elastic together so they don't budge, and then sew the opening for the elastic closed. You are now going to pin the sleeve to the bodice, matching the seams and the center dot to the shoulder seam. Then use the basting stitch we created earlier to gather the top of the sleeve and stitch in place. Now I am finishing the edge with my serger. The bodice for option A is now complete, so it's time to move on to bodice B. After sewing the darts, I'm going to stitch the shoulder seams together, keeping the fashion fabric and lining separate. And press those seams open. Now I'm pinning those necklines together to stitch in place. After clipping or notching the edge, understitch the lining. Now I am stitching the side seams, keeping the fashion fabric and lining separate. Press seams open. Now this is where it gets sort of tricky. You want to fold the fabrics so that they both touch right sides together. Looks kind of weird, but you want to do that. And then once you got the seams matched up, you're going to pull under and hold your finger right where they meet and stick a pin in it. Now you're going to pin 1/2 of the armhole. You won't be able to go more than halfway. That's okay. Just do half. Now stitch everything you have pinned. Now flip it around to what has not been stitched and pin and stitch. In the same way, you will understitch the lining halfway at a time. Repeat on both armholes. Now, moving on to the skirt, the instructions are the same for both length options. The first thing we're going to do is serge the edge of the pockets. I am now measuring where I want the pockets to be placed on the skirt, which is 4.5 inches down from the top of the skirt, and then pin and stitch the pockets in place. Then serge the edge that the pocket was attached to so that it's all clean. Press the edge towards the pocket. Match the pockets together, pinning in place, and then stitch around the skirt along the pocket edges as well. Press seams open. It's now time to create the hemline for the skirt. I'm going to fold over 1/4 inch and press, and then fold over another 1/2 inch and press, creating a sandwich. Now sew all of that into place. Now lengthen your stitch length and create 2 basting stitches along the top of the skirt, one 1/4 inch away from the edge and one 1/2 inch away from the edge. At this point, I also added a lining piece to the skirt because the gauze was so sheer, but depending on your fabric, you probably don't have to do this. It's a step you can take if you want. Mine was 5 inches shorter than the skirt. Now going to press the lining 3/8 of an inch up for later. Something I'm going to do now that I think makes this gathering process a lot easier is divide the bodice into quarters. So obviously the side seams are 1/2, and then I'll match up the side seams, find 1/2 in between them again, and then you have 4 quarters. I'll do the same thing to my skirt and then attach the bodice and the skirt at those quarters and gather it into place. I find it makes it a lot easier and more accurate. You can choose to do this if you want to or not. Stitch the skirt into place. This part is totally optional, but at this point I like to serge the edge of my seam just so that it's a lot easier to hand stitch the lining in place without having to really worry about all those extra strings and stuff getting in the way. It's totally up to you. I prefer doing it. Now I'm just going to pin the lining over the edge of the skirt piece and get it ready for stitching. Now I'm going to sew all of the lining into place. So, how do they look?
Pick your season or occupation. It's time to send in your application. Get to know your short-term friends you only talk to till summer ends. The best way to spend your day in it when you're only making $10 every 60 minutes. Let's clock out, you and me, wander around West County. Take my hand, shop and see.
And there's the tutorial, guys. I hope you really enjoyed it. I hope you love your Celia dress as much as I love mine. They're so cute. I literally have like 4 different versions of the Celia dress. And if you purchase my pattern, thank you so much. I appreciate all of the support I get from you guys. And if you make this dress, I would love to see how your version turned out. So if you post on Instagram, tag me at emma.lou.sou. And I will have my Instagram linked down below as well. You guys, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and like, because I have so much more content coming your way. So please subscribe and follow along for my sewing journey. Thank you so much for watching this video. Bye.